Hello, everyone, and farewell to all the people leaving. My name is Tom. I'm 29 years old. I work as a consultant in Norway, where I've been working for the last 3 years. And today, I'm going to talk to you a bit about how stand-up comedy made me a better developer. Because a year and a half ago, I started doing stand-up comedy. Yeah. And based on your reaction, no one has seen me do stand-up before. Thank you. I know I have set myself up with failure with this title because it gives the impression that I'm a good developer and a good comedian. I'm neither. I'm mediocre at best. But why did I start doing stand-up? Well, mainly it was because my thing didn't turn on. There you go. Mainly it was because my friend said I was funny. And to be honest, that's kind of the reason why I went into computer engineering as well, because my family said I was good with computers, while all I did really was just turn the router on and off again. But yeah, they said, you should make a career out of it. Yeah. No, but I also started stand-up because of an ego thing, because I saw a stand-up comedian one day and he was shit. And I thought, you know what? I can do better than that. And I think we all have thought that at times, not necessarily about stand-up comedians, but about code we see. You see code that's shit, and you think, I can do this better, and you can't. But when I got my first gig, I had 5 minutes of jokes that I had prepared, and I had confidence because my friend said, "You're funny." I wasn't. I got up on stage and had 5 minutes of silence. A bit like now. Thank you. No, but even with this, I did it again and again. And at some point, I even took my shit show abroad. Now I have performed in 4 different countries, excluding Norway. And in a month, I'm going to perform in a 5th. And even though I have performed a lot abroad, I still have this broken English. Because I was told I could not do this in Norwegian because my Bergen dialect is ugly. Yeah. Case in point. No, but the more stand-up I did, the more jokes I wrote, the more I realized something. And I realized that the way of working with stand-up, it was very, very similar to working with software development, which I do. Because when I analyzed my performance, it was basically just debugging my code in reality. So today I want to go into depth a bit about how I learn through stand-up, that going into new projects, it isn't that dangerous, and how my problem-solving skills became better because I bombed on stage. And a bit about how I actually learned to appreciate my own personal skills and why you should too. That was my TED Talk. But now you know how I got into both development and into stand-up. So I just want to start explaining how writing and analyzing jokes, it's not that different from writing code. Now, before I started doing stand-up, I hadn't written any jokes. I just said random shit that people laughed at. But then when I had to get on stage, I actually had to sit down, write my jokes, look at them, and say, yes, people will pay to laugh at this. It's the same you do with your code, basically. It didn't come out the way I intended that to. You're thinking about, you should be thinking about the functionality, not is this funny when you write your code. But you always have one thing in mind when you write your code, I hope, and that's the output, right? The result of what your code is producing. And like, will it produce what you expect in the way you expect it to? And it was the same, I realized, in comedy or in stand-up. But the output would, it would be the punchline. Because when you start working a project, something, feature, whatever, you don't do it blindly. You don't just sit down and like, yep, I'm gonna do something. You always have the output in mind, the goal, right? Everything you do is designed to reach that outcome. And yeah, sometimes the initial logic that you had, it doesn't produce the expected output. And of course, that might be because of some ill-defined inputs. That transition there. No. No, but then we have the output, right? We start with that. But we need something to get to the output. We need to give context to the punchline, as we comedians say. Because I can't just go on stage and say, you have no idea how embarrassing it is when you're bent over with your pants on your knees and the doctor say that they do prostate checks by blood work. Because you don't understand the punchline. Because I haven't given you the correct setup or the input, right? You laughed, but that was because I said funny words, not because of the punchline itself. And I guess you can see that it's the same within development, right? If you fail to define and produce the correct input to your function or your program, the output, it won't be producing what you need. And the goal that you had of a perfectly crafted output that will solve all the problems defined will fail. And as a comedian, I need to properly define the inputs. The difference is that I'm the only one who knows what the output is supposed to be. But I'm quite dependent on knowing who my audience is, what do they know about the topic I'm talking about and bringing up. I basically need to do a functional analysis of the audience. Otherwise, I will bomb. So I'm going to tell you about the time I bombed really hard. But it actually helped me both in comedy and in development. I'm going to talk about the first time I did stand-up abroad. It was in Prague, the Czech Republic. And I did research. How can I make the Czech people laugh? What do they hate? What do they laugh at? And I found out that they hate Slovaks. The same way we Norwegians hate Sweden, like the jokey brothers over there. So I wrote a 5-minute set where I basically just roasted Slovakia. Quite happy with myself. Yeah, this. People are gonna laugh at this. And I got up on stage and I did my full 5 minutes in complete silence while roasting an entire nation. And when I got off stage, the host came to me and said, I think you need to leave because we have a concept night. There are only Slovaks in the audience. Yep. Yeah. I dropped a Hiroshima bomb on that shit. It was horrible. But the reason, one thing was the bombing itself, but it felt horrible as well because I had done the research. I had put in groundworks into this. I had worked on it to be the best version of me as a comedian. But the output ended up all wrong. But it gave me a valuable lesson, and that lesson I still try to live by every day. And it's do your research, or better research in my case. Because you can do all the possible research in the world about a product that you're developing, but if you don't focus that research towards the users that's supposed to receive it, then it doesn't matter. Your code, just like my performance, will bomb. And if you don't have access directly to your users, do the research you need to get to know them. In my case, I could have just asked the host a simple question. Are there normally Slovaks in the audience? But of course, I do blame the host for not telling me. It's on them. It's not my fault. Well, now I've talked about like the inputs, the outputs, and how I use them in comedy. But we have somewhere in the middle there. We need to take the inputs and produce it into output. So we have the logic. Yes. And this is where the magic happens, right? We turn all of the inputs into the outputs. We do all the things we want with it. And as a comedian, this is where I use it, or where I set the premise of a joke. I make the setup for the punchline. I build the tension, the misdirection, everything. I know I'm talking like I'm a very professional comedian, but I'm not, because no one here has seen me do anything. But I take the audience from the premise itself to the punchline, and hopefully they will laugh at it. If anything fails in my setup or the function body, then you get the wrong output. You don't get the laughter. You get a null pointer, whatever. It's a very good sign that Glenn on the front row is sleeping. Actively listening, yes. My confidence is through the roof. But yeah, then when you when you don't have the correct logic, you will get a wrong input. The failed test will fail. The audience will be silent or sleep. Now, in your head, it might work perfectly when you're doing it. You're writing your code. It's perfect, and it never is. But I think we all have experienced that the code fails, right? Okay, just a bunch of perfect developers. No one? Okay, fine. Noted. I have experienced a lot. My code failing on me, and I never understand why. Because I have written we, but no one here is participating. So I think that I have implemented the correct logic based on the input that I get and based on the output that I am supposed to give. But it fails a lot. But both in comedy and in development, we need the iterations, right? Where we test our logic, we iterate through them, and we refine it. We keep tweaking the logic until we get the expected result or the output. But how can we find out what to tweak? No suggestions? Anything? No? That's right, no one. Debugging. But for each iteration of a function or joke or whatever we do normally some kind of debugging. But when we have to debug, what does that mean? It means failure. We have failed something because we have failed on what we wanted to do. I have a conspiracy that all failure is produced by the big debugging companies, because they would be out of work if we just did our job perfectly. Yeah, the big debugging. But we need to debug it when we have failed, and we need to dissect what we have actually done. And the worst part about the failure and the debugging is then we have to look at it over and over and over and over again until we realize why it failed. When I do jokes that don't hit it off on stage, it's a failure. And then afterwards, I have to listen to a recording of my own failure over and over and over again and over again until I realize, okay, this is why it failed. And it's something that can be quite discouraging. I hope that most of us has felt that while debugging. We look at it, we see it, we tweak it, still doesn't work. We tweak it again, still doesn't work. Or this is my experience of it at least. You are all perfect. But what we do with the failure, that's what's really important, really. Because the failure itself, it's only data, right? It's data containing information about what didn't work. Not how to solve it, but it's the data containing what didn't work. How to solve it, that's why we have jobs, right? That's what we do, we solve problems. And how you process that data, that's what really matters here. I will come back to that a bit later. Right now I want to talk a bit about pattern recognition. So pattern recognition, that's the ability that we have to identify regularities or structures in data or a context just to make sense of it. And by making sense of it, you can then predict some outcomes, you can make decisions based on the patterns, right? It's a bit of, yeah. And this is something that we all probably we do it on a daily basis, but I don't think we ever think about it, that we do it. I think most of us has just done this for so long that, yeah, we know, we got this. And in comedy, a bit close. In comedy, I realized that joke patterns, that was used by basically all comedians ever, because the pattern is the same for almost every joke, really. The pattern itself, if you listen to any stand-up comedian, the pattern itself, it's very predictable. It's what the content is what's surprising, right? That's why different comedians can do different jokes, but with the same patterns. But when I realized this, it allowed me to write jokes faster because I could more easily predict the audience reaction based on some patterns. And I can reuse the structure that I add to make new jokes. And yeah, and as a developer, the ability to recognize these patterns, it's just as powerful. Because if you realize that a problem is like a classic design pattern, it saves you a lot of time. It will prevent mistakes, and it will allow you to focus on the more creative part on the solution. Everyone still awake? Glenn? Yeah. But in programming it helps preventing you from reinventing the wheel every time you start doing something. Yeah, that's why we have loops, we have functions, we have these design patterns. They're all like patternistic ways. I don't know if patternistic is a word. It's just of structuring your solutions more efficiently. So let's say you enter a new project. You notice that several places in the code base there is the same validation logic is used. It's repeated all over. I missed a spot there. Now you might just look at it and say, this is repeated code. I will refactor it into a single reusable function, right? And which you should do, of course. But what you actually have done without realizing it is that you have recognized a pattern and you have utilized the pattern to your advantage to create a more efficient solution. How many here has done this? Those who haven't, do better. No, but this is very basic. I get that for most of you. And the reason I'm bringing this up is not to pretend that I have figured out something revolutionary, because I haven't. But it's to make you guys aware of the fact that you are doing this without even thinking about it. From comedy, I've learned that you should give yourself some credit for accomplishing things like this. Not accomplishing pattern recognition, that's something that you do over time, but actually give yourself credit that you're able to do it. Sorry. Because you are doing something amazing, and you should give yourself credit. But you're so used to it that you don't give yourself credit. But next time you do something like this, that's a pattern recognition, give yourself a pat on the back. Because it is a very honed in skill, and you should be proud of being able to do it. We also have something called cross-cultural patterns. When I say cross-cultural patterns, I talk. That's the comedic way of saying it, because we know what the culture is, right? Thank you. The audience participation here I need to work on. A culture is something that can differ from country to country, right? When I perform in Norway, I can use a certain pattern on my jokes that would work both in Norway and in, let's say, Belgium, where I have performed as well. Humble brag. Now, the patterns itself, or themselves, they are constant. The patterns are there, but the content must differ, because in Norway I have a joke that's based on the wordplay for tung rusmisbruker, but if you directly translate that, it's just a heavy drug addict. That doesn't work in Belgium. They don't have that saying. So when I did the joke, I had the same silence as I do now. Because the pattern itself was correct, but the content wasn't. So even with that, we still need, even if we have the correct pattern, we still need to adjust for the environment. So let's say we work in Java. Do we all know what Java is? Yeah. Thank you. Someone's alive. You're overcompensating for the man next to you. Yeah, but let's say we work in Java, right? And we notice a pattern there, and we can't just copy that code, because even if the pattern and everything, and just throw it into a Python project, because we still need to adjust the content.
Java does not suck.
Okay, you two can fight afterwards. That's yeah, okay, yeah. But yeah, we have to tweak the content. But the better you are at pattern recognitions, the skills that you get from that, it's invaluable, because it teaches you flexibility, because you can see what's universal, what needs adjusting, and how to adapt quickly. And that's invaluable in both comedy and development. So recognizing the patterns, it's key, because it lets you write code, jokes, in my case, faster. You debug faster, and it's much easier to adapt to new situations. Whether it's about just spotting some reusable functionality, or in my cases, some joke structure, your brain is doing the same work. You're seeing the structure, you're predicting the outcome, and you're optimizing your solution. Now, the better you are at this pattern recognition, the easier it will also be to iterate and test your solutions. Because you need the iteration, you need both. You need iteration in both comedy and in coding. You test it, you fail it, you adjust, you test again, you fail again, you adjust, and I do this like 50 times, then it works. Because I can't tell you, oh my god, that was loud, sorry. I can't tell you how many iterations of my jokes I've had. It's embarrassing, really. Because none of the jokes I've had has worked on the first try. And as a developer, I can't remember an instance where I wrote some code and on the first try it just worked flawlessly. Has anyone here experienced? No? Good. Yes, I'm not alone. But even in development, and you go through the same process, right? You write a function or whatever, it crashes, refactor it, it crashes again, I refactor it, I get a null pointer, I refactor it, and then you get the almighty, looks good to me. The process is the same as writing a joke, only when it fails, no one is laughing at your code to your face. Yet. Just show me your code, I will laugh. But the emotional roller coaster, that's the same. and here I circle back here to what we should do with the failure data that I talked about. Because the result we get when we test it, it's failure. Data. The data part is important, it's not just failure. Because the trick is to treat these failures as experiments and data collection points rather than just disasters. Start by analyzing the errors and the feedback without ego, because the errors themselves aren't doing a personal attack on you. They're just errors. Iterate it, refactor it until it works. It's just data. And to actually develop yourself and to become a better developer, you are very dependent on two things: collaboration and feedback. And both as a developer and a comedian, I have been very dependent on both collaboration and feedback to evolve in both fields. Because you rarely work in a vacuum. You don't work alone. You always work with someone or towards someone, right? And to improve yourself, it's critical that you get input from others. And in comedy, it would come from other comedians, some mentors, or the audience, of course, which is the end user here. And in programming, it would come from code reviews, peer programming, user feedback, and again, the end user. And taking this feedback without ego, it's key. Because when it comes to this kind of feedback, it's not about personal criticism. I'm not going to say never, because there are those toxic work environments, but it shouldn't be. It should be about improving the output and the final product. That's what all feedback should work towards. Now, when I say that the feedback should be taken without ego, what do I mean? I'm asking you, I haven't prepared anything. What do I mean? No, but we as humans, we take negative feedback and we automatically just take it as criticism. That's human nature. And getting criticism on work you have done, where you have exposed your brain by doing something creative or problem solving, criticism can be hard to take. But when I started approaching development feedback the way the same way I did as with the comedic feedback. It became constructive, because then I just saw it as data. It helps me improve my code. You refactor, you test it, you get feedback, and instead of being like, oh fuck, I suck at this, you just take the feedback, you look at it, and you deliver something better. When I started writing jokes, I would get feedback like, the joke doesn't work, the setup is too long, and it could sting. Or when my girlfriend said, stop telling me these shit jokes. Yeah, but I learned to take the feedback without ego, because the feedback was there to help me, right? And it should be for you too. Sorry. And I learned to separate myself from the material or the code that you have done, because the joke itself wasn't a reflection on me as a person. It was just a function, basically. I was debugging, and I got to know what was wrong right away. When I started to approach it, yeah, as I said, it's constructive. It helps you improve your code. The reason I'm talking about this is that when I started doing software development, feedback telling me that what I had done, it wasn't good enough, it got to me. And I believe, and I think, many of you have felt the same way. Okay, just me, fine. No, but I started struggling a lot with the so-called imposter syndrome. Yeah, there you nod. No, but I think that's something that's very common in our line of work. But I want to emphasize that the feedback that you get, it's a friend. It's learn to handle it without ego. Process the feedback, use it to improve yourself. Of course, not all feedback can be used for something. I got feedback while doing comedy once, where I just got up on stage and a girl on the front row said, "Ew." I didn't know what to do with it. It wasn't the most constructive feedback that I've had, but it's feedback. That one I did take personally. But for the final part of my talk, I want to talk about some of the more human skills that I have improved after started doing comedy. And it's these. I'm going to start talking about the creativity part. In comedy, it's quite explanatory why you need to be creative, right? The more creative you are, the better the jokes will be. But if you don't use your creativity regularly, it will worsen. It will get worse. And how would that affect me as a developer? Well, when you have good creativity, when you use it a lot, it helps you solve tricky problems, you find some elegant solutions, and you design features that the end users will love, hopefully. And the more stand-up I did, the more creative I've actually gotten. Not better in English, but creative. But it's noticeable in my solutions. And I note it's notable in my day-to-day work as well. Because I notice it myself. I solve things in a much better way. Or I think so, at least. And I am more efficient. I don't struggle that much with solving things. And that's something that I have evolved by doing stand-up. So because I have started to think about some obscure everyday situations and how to make them funny for people, I've actually become a better developer. I'm going to move on to empathy. And for this point, I think some of you might be confused, because we as developers are not normally viewed upon as the most emphatic people. But it's a hidden ability that we need. We need it a lot. In both comedy and in development. Because we might think that empathy only entails like considering others' feelings when they're sad or upset, because that's the day-to-day use that we have for it. But what I learned through comedy is that I need to be able to feel what the audience feels, or the end users. I have to anticipate the reaction, and I had to adjust my deliveries of my jokes to actually connect with them. And it's not, in programming, you have to connect with your users. You need empathy there, because you need to understand your users' need, their frustrations, and their expectations. Writing code without empathy, it's like telling a joke that nobody gets. If you don't understand your users' feelings and their needs in the product, your solution will fail. I'm very harsh here, but it will fail. On to the next one. The flow. This is the state where your creativity and your productivity peaks. In comedy, it's when I'm on stage, the audience is engaged, and everything just clicks. Everyone laughs at everything, and yeah, that's my flow state on stage. When I develop, it's when I'm writing code, or I'm debugging something tricky, or solving a tricky problem, and everything I do just works. I solve the problems, I feel immersed, and then the progress just comes naturally. Some find this flow state easier and more often than others, but it's important to be aware when you actually hit that flow state, because the more you're aware of it, the easier it will be to find it again next time, and the more efficient you'll be overall. So by practicing comedy, it has strengthened my creativity, my empathy, and my ability to find this flow state. And the skills has translated directly to programming, helped me design better code, solve the problems faster, and connect to the users. It's made me a better developer without writing a single line of code. I'm nearing the end of my talk. Just wanted to some takeaways from it, because I have talked a lot. And in this broken English, it can be tiresome to hear. But know what success looks like. Start with the output in mind. We all do this, but try to think about it when you actually do your work. And the context matters. Define the inputs carefully and precisely. The patterns, and the pattern recognition, it saves you both time and prevents mistakes. Embrace the failures and take the feedback. Do something with it. Don't think, oh, God damn, I suck at this. Just because someone says, no, this function or this function name is too long. Take the feedback, use it. And the creativity, the empathy, and the flow, they're your secret weapons. Whether you are writing jokes or writing code, like these skills, it will make you more efficient, adaptable, and confident. Why this matters? Performing comedy, it's taught me to take risks and embrace the failures and connect with people. And all of these things is something that's made me a much better developer as well. And if you leave this room with one thing, let it be this. Don't underestimate how experiences outside of work, whether it's comedy, music, whatever creative it is, it can and it will improve your skills as a developer. The principles are universal. So thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, feedback, let me know. If you think I was mildly funny, I'm available for booking. Thank you.